think people want to waste them. I think they just get stuck. That's what I love so much about coaching is, you get to be a part of the process for watching people, achieve goals and solve problems that they've struggled with. And man, when they get to the other side of it, it is so cool. Then they're not stuck, so they're not wasting it. Like they're living to their fullest potential.
Like millions of people around the world, we need to work. Some do it for the money, others do it for the recognition. And if you're lucky, you do it because you love it. But finding purpose and passion in your work can be easier said than done, and the path to success can be unpredictable at best. But if you're looking for some inspiration, then I've got one question for you. Are you consuming your career, or is it consuming you? Welcome to Consuming Careers. Entrepreneurship often comes in many flavors, and some people thrust themselves into it, and others have it thrust upon them. Hi, I'm Bruce Smith, and this week on Consuming Careers, I'm meeting with Paul Masters, who fell accidentally into a lifelong career of entrepreneurship and learned that that was exactly where he needed to be. Not without his fair share of challenges, Paul grew his passion for leading his own business into a platform for coaching others so that they could build legacies of success in their own lives. So let's join my conversation with Paul. Well, welcome back to Consuming Careers, and it's a gloomy day. It's a gloomy day here in Norcross, and I've got my good friend Paul Masters. Paul, welcome to Consuming Careers.
I am so excited about this.
Well, you may not know this, but we talked about this over the summer, last summer.
Yeah.
And you were supposed to be the first guest, by the way.
Oh, was I?
Yeah, you were. So you were, when we had that conversation, we were at church in the basement.
You thought better of it.
Well, we started talking about it, and it was like we started that interview already, and I'm like, don't give up all your good material now. Let's save it for the podcast. And we could just never get it on the book.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that we could finally get this done after 9 months of talking about it.
I've told everybody I know I'm doing this today.
So you're committed.
Yes.
Oh, great. All right. So why don't you take a minute and just share with the audience who you are and kind of what you're doing now?
Yeah. My name is Paul Masters. I am a native of Atlanta. I grew up here, grew up in Cobb County for the most part.
Yeah.
And, longtime entrepreneur. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur.
Okay.
Never really knew this is what I wanted to do. Didn't know anybody that owned their own business growing up.
Yeah.
But just through actually being invited to join my father-in-law in a business, we ended up starting a business together. And that was in 1992 that we started working together, 1998 that we started the business. And, now I own a couple of franchises and invested in another franchise. I don't have any operational responsibility. I'm on the board of directors of a bank that I helped start. So I guess, here I am an entrepreneur, and I guess you would call it that. And I never had any thought at all about that's what I would do or be.
Well, how did you kind of connect with your father-in-law on that? Was that your first job out of college? Because I was just looking at your profile, and you started that before you finished school, or you went back to grad school.
Yeah, so kind of a circuitous route through my college career. We can talk about that if you want to. But I decided I was going to take a quarter off of school back when the University of Georgia was still on quarter systems. Yep. And that one quarter turned into 4 years. And so I actually had gotten married before I went back to finish night school. Wow. And so, but I was working at a consumer finance company, and they had promoted me to my own branch in a very small mill town in South Carolina. And Jennifer and I were starting to talk about getting married, and the conversation turned to, well, where are we living? Yeah. My job's in Union, and she's like, well, I'm not
living there.
So I'm like, well, this is where I work. So what do we do? And I guess she thought, I'll fix that. And she had her dad call me and offer me a job.
Wow.
And I jumped at it, to get back home and get married. So Yeah, that was October of 92. We got married in March of 93 and about to celebrate 31 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, okay, so we are sitting at the Crossing Steakhouse in Norcross.
Yeah.
Norcross, Georgia. So why are we here? Why this place?
You know, it's probably more what this place represents. So that working with my father-in-law for the first 13 years or so of that relationship. Our office was about a mile down the road here. It was at Jimmy Carter.
Yep.
And he was a big runner. He got me into running, and we would run at lunch together.
Okay.
And we would run past the train station every single day.
Wow.
So,
all right, I didn't know that.
Hundreds of times, thousands of times. I mean, thousands might be, overly dramatic, but this is the route that we ran every time we ran for 13 years.
Yeah.
So, just as our family grew, bringing our kids to the park down here, we've had special celebrations here. I don't know. This is just a neat place. I remember in October of 92 when Bush came through on his railway, his whistle stop tour or whatever it was called.
Yep.
We stood right out here and watched him,
that's pretty awesome.
Speak. So I mean, this has been kind of a constant, I guess. This place and certainly downtown Norcross.
Well, it's a converted old train depot,
right?
In
1909 or something like that.
Yeah, so 110 years. And so it's been a restaurant for as long as I've been here, or as long as I've ever known.
Yep.
So that's a good 25 to 30 years. And it's awesome. And we've had a lot of family times here, too.
Yeah.
And we are literally 50 feet from the tracks. And so a train is likely to, if a train comes through, we have no escape. So other than a mute button.
Yep.
So we'll get that. And our food is just coming. Thank you so much. Perfect. Awesome. What do you got there?
I'm about to say. The other thing is their railway chicken is absolutely to die for. I have not eaten all day in anticipation of having this.
Really awesome. Fried chicken with an awesome sauce on it, on mashed potatoes. Oh my gosh, mashed potatoes. So, and our good friend owns this place, so Louis Fernandez.
And our youngest son went to school with Julian.
Oh really?
Yeah, they were at GAC in the band together.
Awesome.
That were choir together. Yeah.
Well, he's probably pretty talented because Louis is a off the charts pianist.
Yes.
A salsa pianist, and his wife is an amazing singer.
I think his son was at Juilliard.
Oh wow.
For a while. Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
Yeah, they're
we can
legit.
aspire to that. Mm-hmm. So okay. Well, and you got that's a great background to kind of get us started. So, so I want to get into a little bit about Ernest and your father-in-law inviting you in to that business. Because that doesn't sound like it was a plan. You really fell into it. And so kind of talk about that. You jumped at it.
Yeah.
Like no question asked.
Right.
Was that because it sounded like a great idea, or you just want to get back to Atlanta, or was it just the best option on the table?
I grew up and I had a great childhood. It wasn't a perfect childhood. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old. I wasn't living in a car. My mom wasn't addicted to crack or anything like that. But it was an abusive household. But my parents were blue collar workers. My dad worked at a General Motors factory. My mom was a secretary at a cabinet manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
So. We always had food, we always had clothes, but that's just what I knew growing up. I didn't know anybody that owned their own business. I was probably in middle school, but certainly in high school before I realized that, dads did things other than worked at the GM plant.
Yeah.
That
was in Dorville, the one in Dorville?
It was the one in Dorville.
Assembly plant,
my grandfather actually worked at that one at the at the Dorville plant, and my dad worked at the one at Lakewood, which was in town at the time. So, even graduating from high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just kind of went to college because that's what everybody else did.
Right.
I loved writing. I thought maybe I'd be a journalism major. I played football in high school. I thought maybe I'd be a teacher and a coach. I just didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. I was the first person in my family that I'm still aware of that went to college, much less graduated from college. So I didn't really have any role models that said, hey, do this, do that. You should be an accountant. You should be a doctor. You should, whatever. So I just didn't really know. And so I knew I had to work. In college, my mom and my stepdad, she got remarried, and so they moved out to a tiny little town out near Social Circle called Monticello, Georgia.
Yep.
And the big claim to fame of Monticello at that time was that's where Georgia Pacific had a plywood plant.
Yeah,
and so I got a job at the plywood plant in the summer. And that's when
air conditioned, was it?
It was air conditioned. It was 9 to 5. It was pretty cushy. One summer, my job was we had to rebuild the dryer vents on the roof where they dried the sheets of plywood that went through. And I kind of started to dawn on me then that this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm not sure what that is, but this isn't it. But then I got that job, working for that finance company. And I guess that sort of made me start thinking more about, hey, I could use my brain for a living. And what does that look like? But, over the course of the years, I think I have figured out a lot about myself. One of the things is I think a little bit ADHD, and so I think I thrive in an environment where the rules aren't as defined, so I kind of get to make it up as I go. I think probably, being a business owner and entrepreneur kind of lends itself to that,
So you think that's an asset?
I think it's an asset for me. I mean, I think, one of the things, and you and I have talked about this book before, reading this book really just several years ago, called Zone. It's written by a guy pastor named Craig Groeschel. It's a Hebrew word, as I recall, meaning dream or vision. And I was going through a transition. We'll probably talk about that. But it really helped me kind of articulate what it is that I think I'm good at, what I enjoy. And one of the things, I remember we were driving to Orlando, I want to say, Jen and I were, and I talked and she wrote. And so the three things that came out of that, one of those was that I like trying to turn nothing into something. Those were the words, it doesn't have to be very big, but I enjoy that. And so I think being in a kind of an unscripted environment where I sort of get to define what that something is, that just kind of plays to my strengths and my passion. So I guess if that's what being an entrepreneur is, then okay. But that's part of, I think, what kind of gets me up in the morning.
That's great. And I'm going to pause right here.
Yep.
So you can eat that food that's hot.
Okay.
And we'll get right back to it.
Okay.
So thank you, Crossing Steakhouse.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, let's get back to it. So now you're working with your father-in-law.
Yep.
Which I think is interesting, kind of family businesses. And I'll tell you, I've always told everybody stay away from family businesses.
Yeah.
It's just a recipe for complexity on many levels.
Yep.
So tell me about, how many years were you there with Ernest? And
we worked together for 21 years, I think.
21 years, okay.
Yeah, 92 till we sold the business in 2013.
Yeah. So tell me about kind of that relationship. How were you able, if you were able to compartmentalize it just at work, or how did it spill over? I just can't imagine how you couldn't contain it.
Well, first of all, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, Joe Ernest and Pam Ernest, I love dearly, and they have treated me like their son for the entire time. 30 years now, 32 years since I've known Jennifer.
But that doesn't let you off the hook, right?
It doesn't let me off the hook. No, but I mean, they have loved me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't deserve to be loved,
That's great.
They've been awesome in-laws. But I mean, just being a part of a family business, I didn't know it then, but I would tell every single person that I ever talked to about this is it's not good or bad. It just has its own set of idiosyncrasies. There's lots good about it. There's lots that could be bad about it. So you just have to kind of know what you're getting into and manage to that. And the biggest thing that you referenced is boundaries. It is so hard to control the commingling of the relationships, to know. Yeah. Because you're always at work. At least that's, looking back at it, it didn't feel like it really, but you're always at work. You're talking about it at Sunday lunch and, Christmas dinner, and, you might call each other at 9:00 at night or, 8:00 at morning or whatever. So that was the hard part. And I think probably when we sold the business, I don't know that either one of us could have articulated it or even knew it at the time, but I think it just wears on you after a while that those commingling of relationships starts to wear on you.
Sure.
And so it was. I mean, we made it for 2 decades.
Yeah.
So we did really good. But it's also been good even just the last 10 years now. We're just a family.
Yeah, that's great. So how would you say that the business set the tone for your personal life, or was it vice versa? And what kind of advice or lessons learned, other than the boundaries piece?
Yeah.
Can you share?
I think that's probably, a book I love is The E-Myth, and so, and also it's a Covey principle too, starting with the end in mind and working backwards. And we didn't do that. And I don't even think, we didn't know to do that. It's like, hey, this could be a fun business. Let's start this. And, oh, whoa, it got pretty big, now what? Yeah. But I think starting with the end in mind and working backwards helps you kind of know if you're winning or not. Mm-hmm. And also, I think part of that too is knowing what you want from your relationships and trying to define that as best you can at the beginning. It'll take twists and turns and, ebbs and flows, and you'll have to recalibrate that. But I think, laying the roadmap out as clearly as you can from the very beginning, helps to kind of keep you from getting off track and not realizing how it was that you got there.
Yeah.
If I could do it over again, I wouldn't do anything differently other than I think I would want to define kind of what work life and what family life looks like outside of that.
As if you could actually, kind of set those rules in place and follow them, right?
Right. Yeah.
You probably spend a lot of time creating those, but then, life just happens, and it's not like you can throw a flag up and say, hey, we agreed that we wouldn't do this at dinner. Well, it just comes, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, I'm going to get back to the roadmap piece in a minute. So fast forward, sold it to Birch.
Yep.
I think you stayed on for a little while.
I did. I stayed for 3 years.
How'd that go?
It was a blessing. I tell everybody it was a blessing. Probably the biggest thing that I learned is I never want to work for anybody again if I can help it. And I think I just had been institutionalized at that point. Like we had 60 people in our company when we sold. For better or for worse. I got to make all the decisions. At least my father-in-law, we got to make all the decisions. We sold, and it was a 1,600 person company, and I was on the executive team. But honestly, it didn't feel like anybody cared much about what I thought, and not their fault. I don't blame them for it, but but then I think also just being in that environment, it was a lot more structure than I was used to.
I bet.
And so I think it just kind of crystallized in my mind too. I'm happiest being able to color outside the lines. Yep. I'm happiest if there are no lines,
How long did it take you to figure that out? Like right away, or there probably a honeymoon period there?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a honeymoon period. And there was also a changing of the CEO. The CEO there, when they bought us, I really liked him a lot. I think he appreciated kind of my personality and, more or less, I'll say left me alone, if you will. Had a new CEO, and he was very much of a micromanager. And that hastened my departure. That hastened my departure. I tell you, though, at that time, 2013, 2017, I was 7, so I was approaching 50. And I went through a time there where I was really, I'll say afraid for lack of a better word.
This is after you left Birch?
No, getting ready. I wanted to leave.
Okay.
But those thoughts of, hey, I'm 50,
yeah,
all I've done really is kind of my own thing, start this little small company that happened to kind of catch fire a little bit, I don't have any real practical experience, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Who's going to want me?
Right.
Really kind of some fear and doubt crept in, and I was kind of stuck, I felt like, because I wasn't happy where I was, but I didn't see what the path was going to be or could be. And, my sweet wife, she finally sat me down one night and said, God has something bigger for you. Mm-hmm. This is not it. Quit and go figure out what it is.
Wow.
And I resigned the next day.
Wow. That's a supportive wife right there.
I'm telling you, she is my spiritual superior in every sense of the word, but she gave me the courage. She gave me the freedom to go figure it out. Wow. And so I am so thankful for that.
Gold star for Jennifer.
Gold star for Jen.
So talk to me about that process. So it sounds like able to make the decision and you just pulled the ripcord.
Yep.
And jumped. So what was that? Did you have a game plan like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend 30 days on a retreat, or we got this process I'm going to go through and feel pretty good after 6 months. I'm going to have a game plan. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
Or were you thinking anything?
Yeah. So along the way, from that 3-year period of time, that from when we sold to when I resigned, I had a good friend of mine had introduced me to a franchise consultant.
Okay.
And he had met him at some continuing ed course, I think, and was like, hey, you should talk to this guy. And just, and so I did. And I really liked him. It was really, I'd say maybe my first serious introduction into the world of franchising and what that could be and what it could be for me.
And by the way, I think they get a bad rap.
I think they do
I'm a
too.
big believer in franchises.
Yeah.
I think they're awesome.
Yeah, there's so much depth to the world of franchising. It's not just a McDonald's or a Subway, and there's nothing wrong with those businesses, but that's just, kind of what people think about food when they think about franchising, but there's so much to it.
Yeah, so I mean, when people are going through kind of job change and career change, it's like, you need to look at it, like at least consider it.
Right.
Because
I mean, more millionaires are made in franchising than any other type of business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'd met him, and so we had just had kind of, a few kind of high-level sort of introductory meetings, but he opened my eyes to what the world could be like. And so I had filed that away, and even during those 3 years, he had sent over some businesses to look at. Mm-hmm. I thought... I had figured out a couple of things, I think, that I thought I wanted to buy something. I didn't want to start something from scratch. Okay. And so as resales came available to him that fit, my, quote, profile, because that's the coolest thing about it is they put you through a battery of assessments. And then, there's kind of this matchmaking process that if the franchisors are doing their job, they're benchmarking their top performers. And so it's hey, you check this X, Y, and Z box on this profile you filled out. These 5 franchisors, their top performers, are checking these X, Y, and Z boxes. These might be good fits for you.
So what were your criteria, your kind of big criteria?
I didn't really know, honestly, other than I knew a couple of things. I knew I didn't want to start one from scratch.
But you wanted to be an operator, not just an investor.
I wanted to be an operator.
Okay.
I didn't care as much about what the product or service was.
Okay.
I cared about how I got to sell it. And to me, what that means is I'm a connector. I'm a highly relational person, and I want to sit down and get to know you, just because that is interesting to me. So I didn't want to be a transaction,
Okay, good.
And so
Good.
I knew that about it. I was hoping there would be kind of a teaching or a mentoring type of component to it,
To your staff, kind of to
the staff. And, what I've turned out to do is what some people call a territory owner or a master franchisee or a regional developer for a commercial cleaning business. And really the way that works is, we own the territory. We essentially are the sales and admin piece. And we help individuals start their own kind of unit franchise.
Yeah.
And some of them, have never owned their own business. They know they don't want to keep doing what they're doing. They just don't know how to get out of that to begin the process. And we get to kind of coach them through, what it means to kind of own your own business.
That's
and
great.
So, when we went down for Jennifer and I went to the discovery day for the franchise, and really got to kind of look under the hood and see what it was all about and understand it a ton better. When we got on the plane to come back home, I looked at Jen and said, "What do you think?" And she said, "If you don't do this, you better do something that looks just like this, because I think this is what you are supposed to do."
So that's a second gold star for Jennifer.
Oh my gosh, I can't count the number of gold stars that she has racked up over the last 3 decades. It's
that's awesome.
innumerable.
So
probably
awesome.
how you feel about Carol Lee, I'm sure.
Yes.
So,
yes. The brains of the operation.
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly. So I had the franchise piece. I knew that was something I wanted to pursue, at least, kind of dig deeper into. And I also, referencing that book again, Causone, I had that. That was the first thing I did, because I wanted to create a framework for myself to think about what's next.
That's
Give
great.
me some sort of criteria or a matrix through which, to view these opportunities.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little while ago, that you shared that book with me about 10 years ago. And I dug into that because I was going through a career change. And that has been a big part of my kind of story change too. So I'm going to make sure we put that book in the show notes.
Okay.
That's
great.
Craig Rochelle, yeah.
Yeah. And I still remember the 3 things that I walked away from that experience with. Number 1 was, I think I said earlier, I like trying to turn nothing into something. Number 2 was that because of, just my personality and the extroverted and, desirous of community, I wanted to work with people that I know and trust.
Yep.
And number 3 was, I say I wanted to influence the outcome. Jennifer remembers that it says, I wanted to make all the decisions. But, I don't mind owning that process. Some people don't like it. I don't mind it. So, and then, also, I guess being in that environment for 3 years between selling and leaving, I felt like what it was not to make the decisions after I had made all the decisions. And I just didn't want to go back to that if I could control that. So.
Okay. And kind of wrapped around this as well, you're doing some executive coaching.
Well,
is that formal? Is it informal? Kind of what does that look like?
So that really started just about 3 or 4 years ago now. So when Jennifer and I first got married, she was taking graduate level classes on mental health counseling. But when our oldest was starting his senior year in high school, we were walking our dogs one Saturday morning, and I remember asking her, what's next? What's Gen 2.0 going to look like?
Yeah.
She decided, I want to go back to school. I want to go back and, pick back up on this master's program, and, I want to see that through, and, I want to start counseling. So she comes home. She went to a conference. She comes home and says, hey, I found this cool curriculum that I think you and I could do together, so maybe we could have our own thing. So I thought, hey, that sounds awesome. If you are, going to be a licensed professional counselor, I don't want to do that. but I really do want to have some credential in some helping profession. So I knew some people. Actually, one of our pastors at church was an executive coach, and so I called him and said, hey, what is this all about and what do you do? And he pointed me to the International Coaching Federation. And so that is not a small undertaking. It was about 40 course hours and 60 coaching hours. No, it was 100 coaching hours. So it took me 9 months full bore to kind of get through this process. But on the other side of that, I thought I really, really loved this, thing called executive coaching. And so I've gotten plugged in with a couple of franchises that and that I'm involved in, and have gone to them and said, hey, can I be a support to either new or struggling franchise owners, that your field support staff can't get to.
That's great.
And it's been awesome. I probably keep a rotation of about, 15 folks that I get to work with, once or twice a month for some going on 3 years now. And so
that's great.
It's really been awesome.
Okay. I want to back up a little bit.
Yep.
Kind of going to go to the 45,000 view.
45,000. Okay.
45. We're going a little bit higher. I want to talk a little bit about purpose. So, do you feel like you have kind of a defined purpose, overall purpose in your life, and that incorporates and extends over into your career? Do you feel like you've kind of defined that?
I do. It's an interesting question because I think even at 56 years old, I still find myself in my quiet moments asking me, what am I supposed to be doing? So I don't know that really ever goes away. I think we think about it so specifically, though. At least I think we tend to think about it that way. We think about, should I be a lawyer? Should I marry, Susie? Should I live in Albuquerque? I guess we think about it as specific sort of event-driven types of scenarios. I don't think it's that easy. I don't think that's the answer. Maybe that it's not that cut and dried. But, being a person of faith, I think that my purpose is really to live out to the best of my ability, maximizing the skills and abilities and talents that, my Creator has given me, and to help others do the same thing.
And so how does that play out into work? For example, you referenced E-Myth, right?
Yep.
With the end in mind.
Yep.
And if you kind of attach that to a spiritual purpose, it's with your purpose in mind, right? How, and it may not necessarily apply to your experience at Earnest, because you kind of jumped in with both feet without any purpose in mind. It's like, let's do it. Looking back on that, did that form your purpose? Do you think it helped you clarify that, or maybe kind of struck a few chords like, wow, this is really working?
So I guess I think about purpose is overarching, and it's sort of irrespective of what the project is.
Yeah.
And so I think of project as a job or a career or an occupation. Like, those things change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't work for one company for 45 years, anymore. You could be, I think I heard one guest you had was a nurse and then a pastor, and so I think those projects change, those assignments change. It's really, the purpose is what is driving me as I pursue those different paths that I find myself on, every 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I don't know, also, I think it's a work in progress a little bit. I don't know that you can appreciate that at 25 or 30. You've got to get your head beat in a little bit and have a few, scars on you, I think
you're right.
before you start to understand that as you can.
Which is totally upside down to me, right? It's like we should have that purpose thing worked out early, and then you just kind of accelerate through it in your life. But, I think you spend most of your time when you're young figuring out what your purpose isn't.
Yeah.
Until you finally land on it, when you're 40, 50, 60.
Yeah.
And it starts to come together. Now I can write it in a bullet point. Mm-hmm. But it's just a little too late to apply. That's funny. So, and then tying that purpose to passion. Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe you've got a pretty good sense of what your purpose is. Is your purpose or is your passion for that purpose equally strong? I ask that question because sometimes you have a purpose, but you're like, I really don't want to do that. It just doesn't inspire you, but you feel like I'm being called to that, or I'm really good at that, and I'm all over that. So do you think they're like, do they fuel each other? Do they have to be tied together? What do you think about that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a good question to ponder. I'm not sure that your purpose is that much different than your passion, or at least from the standpoint of you probably are going to be most successful in living out your purpose when you are kind of, fueling it through what your passion is, not to say that you can't find your purpose in the ordinary and the mundane and all the things, but I think you probably feel like you're mostly in the zone, if you will, when your purpose and your passion intersect.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this before. Cal Newport has a great book, and it's so good they can't ignore you, which is a quote from Steve Martin. But his point, or one of the points he makes in that book, is you really shouldn't follow your passion. You should not. He would say that you would follow what you're good at, and passion will follow. When you realize, wow, I'm really good at selling, or I'm really good at leading, or I'm really good at technology, and the better you get at that skill, the more passion you'll have for it, because you start to stand out and you get all those rewards of success, and that drives your passion. Would you agree?
I don't know. I mean, the word that pops into my mind as you're talking is those are maybe extrinsic values. You're getting your validation from the President's Club, or the bigger check, or whatever that is, or the bigger title, and those aren't bad things.
Yeah.
I guess I think about that passion is more intrinsic. And so they don't necessarily have to be diametrically opposed to each other. But I guess those are the words that kind of come to mind. Is where's your intrinsic value?
Well, it sounds like a lot of what you went through at Earnest, and then the acquisition, and then now with the franchise and coaching is really helped form your purpose, or clarified it, right? So you're able to execute it on it even more effectively, right? So what have you learned about yourself through coaching? What have you learned about yourself as a leader? If you can be objective about that, as a franchise owner, and do you take your own advice as a coach? The same advice you'd give to others?
Coaching is when coaching is done well, it really has almost nothing to do about what I know or what I think. It has everything to do with what the coachee knows or thinks.
Wow.
It's not consulting. It's not giving advice about what you should do or you shouldn't do, or follow these 3 steps and then see me in 2 weeks. It is really coachee driven. It's more about, what they are thinking, what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. It's kind of a journey of self-discovery almost. And then the coach, those who do it well, are just kind of along for the ride, asking questions that sort of prompt, insight and awareness. And so, Yeah. That's what I like so much about it, is because I don't really have to be a subject matter expert about anything, which plays to my strengths, because I'm not, so, but being inquisitive, being curious, being genuinely for the person, that is sitting on the other side of you. I think one of the things that drives me is, I was talking to Jen about it this morning. One of the things that drives me is, maybe it's because, I'm an Enneagram 3, so I'm an achiever.
Yeah.
And I do not want it said about me any day ever that I gave less than my best.
Wow. Okay.
Because it's a waste, I think. We're wasting the talents and, gifts and abilities that we were given. And I just don't want to waste those. And I don't think people want to waste them. I think they just get stuck, and they don't know how to get past that to the next, to the next gate, to the next stage. And that's what I love so much about coaching is, you get to be a part of the process for watching people, achieve goals and solve problems that they've struggled with. And man, when they get to the other side of it, it is so cool.
Yeah, and see the breakthrough.
Yeah, and then they're not stuck, so they're not wasting it. Like they're living to their fullest potential, whatever that is.
The biggest challenge, at least on the front end of coaching, it's like, does your client expect you to be the expert? I would think that's the expectation going in. Like, this Paul guy, he's been through it, so he's going to tell me what to do, and we're going to get out of this hole. That's got to come up?
It does. You try to establish the ground rules pretty early on. That this is not therapy, this is not consulting. I'm not here to tell you what to do or give you advice. So you get to share observations along the way, but by and large, there's a saying that says we don't need more information, we need more revelation. And so, you think about, the times in your life where people told you what to do versus you figure it out on your own. Where was the ownership, right? So, So I think that's what
good.
Happens.
Yeah, that's a good premise. I mean, owning the solution, not just hearing about it.
Exactly.
I've read too many books that I've forgotten. So what's the most challenging part? Is it kind of the people, the operations, technology, maybe the business environment? Kind of what do you spend most of your time on?
It's probably always the people.
You got a people business there.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly, the last 3 or 4 years, have been unprecedented in terms of unemployment and, going through COVID and some of the federal government stipends and, competing with the U.S. government for, employees at a certain at a certain pay band or franchise owners, So it has been an interesting several years just because our business is driven by people. So.
Yeah. What when it comes to, I'm going to come a little bit back to kind of purpose and focus, and what guardrails have you kind of put around you? That sounds like Jennifer's one already, but guardrails you have in your life to stay focused, to stay on task, stay on purpose, kind of going after those things that you think you are equipped and blessed to do.
Yeah, that's a good
Not everybody
one.
has a Jennifer.
Yeah, I think I'd say number one, just my faith. I think that informs, or hopefully informs, keeps me focused on the right things. Number one. Number two is I have a coach.
Do you?
So just that process helps me be focused on the right things. In all of our businesses, we have have weekly meetings. We have quarterly reviews. We have semi-annual and annual goal reviews. I'm hopefully trying to eat my own dog food in terms of working backwards. Starting with the end in mind, and then taking opportunity to adjust as we see that this is working or it's not working.
Well, I'm sure there are things that kind of break down in the business and kind of in your world, whether it's just challenges with people or the government or you name it, right? Mm-hmm. Even just sales and getting clients. Kind of what fuels you? So what keeps you going through those challenges instead of just throwing up your hands?
Yeah, there have been plenty of those times. I think it's that I'm very goal oriented, and I want to know where the finish line is. And once I know where the finish line is, I will do everything in my power to get there. If it's running, if it's crawling, I'm just very goal oriented. And that's a lot of kind of what makes me tick, I think, is, hey, if I'm going to run a race, what's a good time? Let's train for running that time. If we're going out here, then we might as well make the most of it.
Is that sustainable?
Is that sustainable?
Because I asked that because that sounds like it falls into the bucket of willpower, right?
Okay.
And there might be days where you just don't have it. Like, it's raining, I don't want to run today.
Yeah.
What?
That's true. I don't know. I guess I've never would have thought that it's not sustainable because it's been what's got me out of bed every morning.
Ignorance is bliss. We'll just leave it there.
Yes, I told you at the beginning I'm not very smart, Bruce. So,
we just keep things simple.
Yeah, I mean, that is so core to who I am.
Yeah,
I never would not imagine having a goal.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just what makes me tick, I think.
That's great. Okay. Well, what's kind of the next chapter look like for you? Maybe, you might stay in this for another year, or it might be another 10 years.
Yeah.
But do you see kind of a different chapter, different phase, whatever that looks like in the future?
I do. I think that's another thing, that I'm drawn to is painting a vision for what the future looks like. And I've been thinking about that for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
I kind of have this goal in mind. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I so love the executive coaching. I call it executive coaching. I so love the coaching. The other interesting thing about the coaching, Bruce, is every relationship that I have coaching-wise starts off as professional. Mm-hmm. Every single one of those conversations at some point turn to personal.
Okay.
And so, you just cannot separate, what happens at home with, with what happens in your office. And those things so much drive each other. My little coaching tagline says enabling entrepreneurs and executives to win in every aspect of their personal and professional lives, because I think you can't show up as your best self anywhere, if you're not winning on both of those things. So I just think that's so interesting, is every engagement probably begins working on some business issue or business goal, but inevitably we end up talking about what's going on, within them.
Yeah.
And
you
so
just can't separate it.
It's so cool. It's been probably one of the most surprising and the coolest things about it. But it's because of that, I think that's what kind of my next adventure is moving more into full-time coaching.
Okay.
Maybe some more consulting, with those two things are different.
Yeah.
And see where it grows from there.
That's great. All right. Sounds like there is a game plan.
There is a game plan. Yeah.
Unlike the last 40 years, we've got one this time.
Yep. We have a game plan. We'll see how we do at pulling it off. But
that's great.
Yeah, I
great.
have an idea for what's next.
Any kind of big picture advice that you'd share about how to, at least from what you've learned about kind of managing people, or managing is a bad word because managing doesn't change anything. Leadership changes things, right? So anything that like a real light that came on, like this is how you lead people successfully through change or to a goal.
So several years ago, I went through this, I went through about a 12 or 18 month leadership program. It was actually, maybe it wasn't that long. It was pretty long though, but it was kind of in between when I was winding down at Birch and getting ready to do the next thing, and even kind of bled over into that. But it was called Giant Worldwide.
Yeah,
and you know Giant,
yep.
yeah.
Sure.
So Giant, has a thing that they talk about, to be a leader worth following, but to be a leader worth following, you have to be able to lead yourself well.
Yeah.
Well, to be able to lead yourself well, you have to know yourself well. And so just even, that journey of self-discovery, but what it does is it helps you sort of spin the mirror back around a little bit, to the people that you're leading, and say, hey, what makes you tick? Talk to me. What do you want? It becomes less about what I want and more about what you want, and you may be here for another week, another 10 years, but however long you're here, I want what you want out of this.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people, we had a young lady that worked for us in our commercial cleaning business, and I had this conversation with her, and she said, what I really want is to get into real estate. I've always loved real estate. I want to get into real estate.
Yeah.
So, we helped her pursue her real estate license, and she left us. But hey, that's
great.
That's awesome.
That's a success story. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you've heard the old thing, like, what if we train them and they leave?
Right.
What if we don't and they
stay?
stay? Yeah.
That's so classic. I love that.
And it's not even about that. I think it's about getting back to, what makes people tick, and let them, growing and flourishing in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, we also have a joke that we say, if it weren't for customers and employees, we'd have a great business. So like managing people stinks. Leading people is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think I'm way better at that than I am at the management piece.
That's a huge differentiator. And I think I heard that from Craig Rochelle. I mean, he just clarified it for me, because he's got a great podcast too that I listen to occasionally around leadership. But yeah, and I've experienced both. I'm sure you have, being managed versus being led.
Yeah.
And I definitely would prefer to be led than managed. All right, we're going to kind of bring this to a close. I've got one more question, and you've heard this before, but are you consuming your career, or is your career consuming you? And that could be now, it could be over the course of your career. How would you?
Yeah, I think there are probably, days and weeks of, where each one happens.
Yeah.
I would like to think that I have consumed my career, that it has not consumed me. My parents being divorced when I was young, and really I never had a relationship with my dad after that happened at 10 years old.
Wow.
And so, man, I always, and everybody in both sides of my family growing up, they had all aunts and uncles had been divorced. Only my grandparents had never been divorced. And so I count it the biggest win of my life that I've been able to stay married for 32 years and have 3 wonderful children and 2 amazing daughters-in-law. So because of that, I'd like to think that has been my priority, and I did not let my career consume me, because I didn't want to be what I saw growing up.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly lessons to be learned from either being consumed or seeing someone being consumed and being impacted by that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that definitely consuming your career is where, I want to be. And
how would you answer that question?
See, I'm not supposed to answer that question. I'm still wrestling with it.
Are you?
But I would say there have been some times in my career that it has consumed me, but they may have been the most growth years for me, and I was younger, where I just learned so much, and you just kind of did what you had to do, right?
Right.
And I think there's a place for that. I think as you get older, you have the luxury of choosing, and the wisdom, I would say maybe more, the wisdom to consume your career, define it and where it fits in your life, and where you'll let it in and not, in your life, so that you don't get consumed by it. That would be my answer right now. Give me a few more episodes and we'll better define that.
I have questions, but I won't ask.
Is that the coach coming out in you?
I think so.
Well, let's go into my favorite part of the podcast.
Let's do it.
This is the lightning round.
Okay.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Cha-ching, here we go. What's the top destination on your motorcycle ride bucket list?
So I'm in the process. So this is a combination motorcycle and bicycle, if that's okay. Right now, I'm in the process of booking a trip with some buddies to ride Road to the Sun, Glacier National Park in June. Yeah, so that
sounds great.
That's next. Doing some of the Tour de France climbs would also be on the bucket list.
Oh, that'd be great. All right, best business book recommendation.
I'm going to go with the E-Myth, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Best advice you've ever been given about marriage?
It's not a 50-50 proposition. It's 100-100.
That's good. Who'd that come from? Do you know who that?
I don't remember, no. But, 50-50 leads to keeping score and nobody wins.
Yeah.
It's 100% expecting nothing in return.
Sounds like it stuck. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because of your work you do, is it a rule in your house to take your shoes off at the front door?
No.
Okay. See, that keeps you in business, right?
Yes. Yes. Stamping out dirt wherever it exists.
I love it. All right. Last question.
All right.
True or false? Did the phrase, if you're not first, you're last, originate in 2020 on Route 12 between Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef
You've been
National
talking to
Park?
Trammell, right? So Trammell has it in his mind that he beat me on this climb. Yeah. So I led the whole way, and somehow or another he takes off in the last 10 yards and won't let me forget about it. But that's okay.
So really, if you're not first,
you're last.
You're last. Well, congratulations, you're last. That one goes out to Joe. Okay, so how can somebody find you, follow you, connect with you?
Yeah, probably the best is paulmasters@yahoo.com is the easiest way to find me.
Okay, all right. And what's the name of your business? The coaching business, do you have a website for that?
It's called Perissos, Perissos, perisosleader.com.
Okay, great. So people can find you there too.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I'm glad we finally kind of worked this out after 9 months.
This has been awesome. Can I come back?
Calendar. Yes, you can.
Okay.
Actually, it sounds like we need to get Jennifer back because she might have a little bit more to add.
She's amazing.
Well, thanks again. This was a great lunch, and really appreciate the folks at The Crossing hosting us today, and highly recommend it.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, Paul.
5 stars. Thank you. See you, Bruce.
Thank you for joining us on Consuming Careers. If you've enjoyed the show, please click the follow button in your podcast app so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And if you have a minute, write us a review. We truly appreciate hearing from our listeners. And as always, I'm Bruce Smith, and you've been listening to Consuming Careers.